Welcome to the Creepin' It Real show, your one-stop shop for weird news, spooky, otherworldly, and paranormal shenanigans. We'll take a dive into what's going on in creepy pop culture. You can follow us on Twitter at creepin_it and like us on Facebook at the Creepin' It Real show. Do you have a paranormal story you'd like to share with us? You can email us at creepinitrealshow@gmail.com. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Creepin' It Real show. Creepin' It Real show. It could be an ING, an IN, or none. Just creep it real, however you want to say it. I am your host this evening, Christy, in the great state of Georgia. And joining me tonight is another resident of the great state of Georgia, Yardley. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Survived All-Star Weekend, and I'm ready to dive into this podcast.
Survived your birthday?
Yes, I did. That's a good thing.
You made it back.
Yeah, I did.
Hey, it's important we survive those milestones as we get up there. Well, I'm up there. Y'all are way younger than me, so
stop.
I am now at the age of groaning when I stand up. But I'm that commercial. What is that insurance commercial where it's like, don't be like your parents, and he like does those seminars? Those are my favorite commercials because they're me, like me turning into my parents. It's hilarious. So with that, over on the West Coast, I don't know if it's the best coast, but it is the West Coast. Moni, how are you doing?
Pretty good. Feeling pretty best coast, enjoying the weather. And I spent some time at some spooky locations this week, and I posted it to our Facebook page, some live videos, the Cecil Hotel, and then an old asylum campus. And I will be taking them off of our Facebook page shortly and putting them exclusively to our Patreon. So just wanted to tell you that has happened. It was exciting.
Ooh, exciting. All right. Awesome. Thank you for doing that for us. Moni is the one that actually goes and does things. I just read about them and tell you stories.
And these things.
Moni actually goes. So with that, tonight we're going to do a part 2 of our spooky stories. I did add a few at the end if we have time of some black-eyed kid stories that are starting to pop up around the interwebs. Interesting little stories of people saying that they're starting to see black-eyed kids showing up more in this last year than have been reported in the past.
Because we broke everything last year.
Right. I yanked a couple of those out and decided to share them. Some of them are not from the past year, but some of them are. And so we might do that. With that, though, we're going to go into what we've been watching. And I'm going to start with you guys first since I'm the host, and I will let you guys talk about what you watched. Yardley, I am with you. I did get to see this one, too, and I'm excited that you want to talk about it.
Coming to America, it dropped on Amazon Prime back on the 5th. And for those who aren't familiar, it's about newly crowned King Akeem, who's played by Eddie Murphy, and his trusted confidant, Simi, who's played by Arsenio Hall. They embark on an all-new adventure that has them going back to Queens, New York to get the son he never knew he had. When I grew up when the original Coming to America was out, it was great. I actually remember being in a theater in Warner Robins, Georgia, when the first one came out. It ended up being like a standing room only, and people sitting all in the aisle of the movie theater. And it was one of these real old, it was called the Rama Theater at the time, but it was a very old theater. And it was one of those theaters, obviously we're in like middle Georgia. It was one of those old throwback theaters that still had the balcony from back in segregation. Where all the black people had to be up top and the white people were at the bottom. So eventually, that theater ended up turning into like the Dollar Theater that was in town. Right. But everybody loved Coming to America. It was great. One of my, best movie experiences with just like a crowd really being involved in what was on the screen was Coming to America. And then I saw this. I thought it was just okay because I'm not necessarily a fan of, the kind of pass the torch movies. The movie was probably more about the use than it was necessarily Prince Akeem. And I really did want a movie that was more involved with Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall. And there are definitely moments in it that are great. I thought that Wesley Snipes was great. I would have loved a movie that would have revolved around a rivalry, perhaps between King Akeem and Wesley Snipes' character.
Right.
But it was good to see a lot of the old crew back, and there are moments in it that hit. I'm just not like the Pass the Torch movies, I'm not that big on, it was kind of like Scooby-Doo. They added Scrappy-Doo. I was like, fuck that, I'm out. You know what I'm saying? Godzilla, they added Godzilla. Yeah. I was like, fuck that, I'm out. So even when I was at an age where I'm supposed to appreciate that, you know what I mean? I'm just,
right.
And nothing against kids, but like when, everybody knows when when the baby shows up, either the baby or the young character is great. And then once they start getting older, it starts to suck, or, they insert it and it kind of takes away from what made it golden. So, it's definitely worth a watch. So for nostalgia's sake, I would definitely recommend it. And I'm pretty confident that everybody might find some things in it that they like. So what'd you think about it, Christy?
I enjoyed it. I know I enjoyed it more than I think Rick enjoyed it. He was fine with it. And he's like you, there were fun moments that were funny. There were a lot of campy, moments, but they rolled with that. It was like they embraced it.
Yeah,
they knew, they weren't trying to make that something that it wasn't. That being said, I loved Leslie Jones in it. Apparently, I just read this article that she talks about. She improvised all her lines. They had given her a script and she refused to follow it. And she was basically like, I made this character what I felt like she needed to be. And they were like, hey, can we just get a few takes of you actually going with the script? And she wouldn't do it. She was literally just doing off the cuff stuff, which I just love her for that. I mean, she's like, nope. And she did what she wanted to do. I thought the friendship between her and the Queen was funny, and they were doing the Humpty dance and stuff. I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. I mean, the son thing, it was exactly the same. I would have appreciated a different life lesson coming from the son instead of the same one. We're doing a little bit of a spoiler here, but they kind of copied the script of his journey, and I would have appreciated something else there. I think they did good with the daughters and Eddie Murphy's lesson there. You're right. Wesley Snipes was awesome.
Yeah, he was awesome.
Oh my God, his daughter was like jaw dropping. I was like, absolutely. If you don't want to marry her, holy shit,
Yeah, and they leaned into that as well. But you know what, Chrissy, like some of the things that are the most recognizable things from the first movie is like the mighty sharp barber shop. It's got the three, the barbers and the people who are always in there, like the Jewish guy, Eddie Murphy, all of them. Yeah. I would have taken an hour and a half movie about them because they're, it's just funny characters, but I understand why they did it because, you kind of want to draw, younger people into it. And just like you were saying, I mean, there was definitely some parts like Wesley Snipes' daughter that was pretty dope. That afro was just real. Lush. I know. Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God, her face. I was like, you don't even look real. I mean, she was crazy gorgeous. Crazy gorgeous. I mean, holy shit. He was crazy. But anyway, the son, of course. But Moni, it was Wesley Snipes plays this brother of the girl from the first movie. Have you seen Coming to America?
I have not seen the first movie.
Shit.
That's your home review. You gotta watch that.
I have probably seen that movie, I'm not exaggerating, easily 50 times in my life. Easily. I could quote it from the beginning to the end, backwards, forwards. All I do is say, this is beautiful. What is this? Like I say that freaking saying constantly. That one, and then, oh shit, I'm drawing a blank right now. But I think the only thing that I thought was really dumb was that there was a McDowell's in Africa. Like, really?
Hey, listen.
I just thought that was stupid, but
Actually, Moni, I think that it's on streaming. I think it's on it's either on Amazon or Netflix. Like it's on one of or Hulu. It's on one of those channels. I think I saw it on there recently. But yeah, I'm sure. Make sure you watch the first. Well, if you have access to the second one, but I would recommend that you watch the first one first.
Oh, first one's a must. It's a classic. And there's when this movie came out, there was all this talk about it and what a classic the first one is. And it was. And I guess like growing up, never once did it ever dawn on me that it's an all black cast. I just loved the movie. You know, it was the kind of fairy tale that I could totally dig with because I've never been a big Disney person. And so I liked this princess fairy tale. This was something I could kind of get into that I didn't get into with the other princess stuff, except maybe I liked, Little Mermaid, but that was it. I really wasn't into all that other stuff. This was the tale that I just truly loved so much, and I watched it so many times. It's countless. And they were talking about it and I never thought about it. But yeah, when you look back, there's not any really, really mainstream movies that were all black casts, except for like New Jack City. But that was about crime and, like that bullshit that was kind of perpetuated. So I was like, wow, that's so true. I never thought about it growing up, but yeah, it was a very rare fairy tale movie with an all black cast. So it was great. They pushed, they did a lot of, stretched a lot of borders and created an awesome story, and nobody thought anything different. It's such a great story. So this new one has a place in my heart just because it came from that. And they did do a lot of throwbacks, which, I was about to get really pissed, except for they finally pulled out Sexual Chocolate at the end, because that was one of my favorite characters. So I was like, okay, fine. I was getting ready to say, you cannot go through this entire movie without Sexual Chocolate.
Oh, so. Yeah. I mean, that was one of the.
I would have rioted, man.
That was one of the main reasons why I just kind of wished it focused on what might have happened to the characters from the first one. But I definitely recommend it, and I'm definitely going to revisit watching it because I really did like Wesley Snipes in that intro. Yeah, now, right. The only other two things that I've watched, and one I am still checking out. One was that I think Moni might have brought it up in the last show. Is that movie on Netflix called I Care a Lot. It's got Peter Dinklage and I can't remember who's the actress. I can't remember her name off the top of my head.
We went through this the last time. Sorry.
Yeah, I ended up checking that out, and for those who aren't familiar with the title, it's on Netflix currently, and it's about a con artist who's a legal guardian that ends up getting into hot water when she tries to scam an elderly woman who has ties to the Russian mob. And I thought that this movie overall, I thought it was solid for most of the movie. I thought that the ending, I was like, because I kind of hate when people go through a movie and they do things and they end up falling up. You know what I mean? And also they managed to, I think anybody on this podcast or anybody listening in, if you had to bet on if the Russian mob or the Russian government was good at killing, we're like, hell yeah, they're good at killing. You know what I mean? And in this movie, it managed to make the Russian mob suck at killing. And that's what kind of turned me off. Yeah, you know what I mean? So if you watch the movie, you'll know what I'm saying. But I thought that the ending was kind of know, whatever. And Two Sentence Horror Story Season 2, I didn't watch Season 1 at all. I just started watching it this season. And it's an anthology horror television series that premiered on the CW network. So basically, we all know what anthology is. They're just short. So most of them run 15 minutes or less. You'll probably get one good one out of 3, but I would definitely recommend, people check it out because there's some, some tasty good ones in there. So I don't know if y'all have ever checked out either season, but I thought it's okay. It's fun.
Okay. And I've checked it out. It's CW, so there's a little punchy pull, but I still think they do a good job fleshing out 2-line stories for sure.
Okay. Cool. All right. Moni, what you got up your sleeve over there?
Not too terrible much, because I actually go places. I'm just kidding.
Right.
But, our sometimes guest Dan, though, hasn't watched a lot of the modern classics. And so this weekend we watched Insidious, and last weekend we watched The Conjuring, or vice versa. I'm not really sure.
Nice.
I am actually in the last half hour at the end of my work day. I've been watching the movie Lucky, so I'm in the last half hour of that. So far it's interesting. It's relatively short, it's only the 90 minutes, or it's actually less than that. But it's on Shudder, and it's a woman wrote it and stars in it, and it's kind of like Groundhog Day and, what's that? Happy Birthday or Happy Death Day.
Okay.
So far.
Seems like it's just familiar. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. She repeats some stuff. It's not supposed to be comedic. I think it's going to be a metaphor for trauma, but I'm not sure. Last half hour, I'm supposed to hit the twist, and that's about where I'm at. And then I haven't watched this yet, but this week, actually tonight, I'm expecting to get access to a movie that you all will have access to by the time this episode drops. It's called Stay Out of the Attic. It's on Shudder as well. And
Stay the fuck out of the attic or stay out of the attic?
Have you watched it yet?
No, I just see in your notes. I was like, you missed the F-bomb.
Yeah. So, I mean, in marketing, they have to say stay out of the attic, but like in colloquialism, it's called stay the fuck out of the attic. Either way, I think it might end up being pretty torture heavy, but I'm not sure. It's a diverse group of ex-cons turned movers actually are paid like 3 times their normal rate to get an entire move done in one night. And the only rules are that they're supposed to stay the fuck out of the attic. And for whatever reason, I haven't watched it yet. Someone doesn't stay out of the attic. They find all kinds of stuff that they shouldn't find. So if that's any good, I'll let you guys know next week how it is. If you get a chance to watch it this week, it drops this coming Friday. So this episode will already be out. Check it out and let me know what you think. But that's what I'm up to.
Awesome. Well, I will take my turn. Full transparency. Moni put this show together for me. She knows I've got a lot going on. I've already said I followed through with a dream I've had forever. Actually, my, a friend of Yardley and I's, inspired me 10 years, 14 years, shit. I don't know how long I've known her. She owns vacation properties and I've always wanted to get one. I'm not financially as secure as she is, so it took me some time, but I finally did follow through with my dream and I am in the middle of closing on a home in the mountains. And as soon as it closes on Monday, I will be up there under Operation Remodel to get it on the vacation market. And I'm really excited. With that, the funniest part about this is we pushed this show to today because I did something stupid and mixed all these alcohols with a lot of sugar in them, and I felt like death warmed over yesterday. And I also, though, had to drive up to the mountains to pick up the radon test that we had set out because I've got to send it off emergency-wise because it's the second test and radon is testing really high in the cabin or in the house. And I am just doing my due diligence of getting a second test because I don't necessarily trust that these people are on the up and up because they also just happen to fix radon problems. So I got a radon test with high levels and a quote on how much it would cost to fix it at the same time. So I was like, okay. With that, y'all, I had to drive up last night feeling like absolute dog shit to this cabin an hour and a half away to pick up the radon test. We ended up being locked out. The keypad didn't work. So we're walking all around this house trying to find a way in. And I haven't really talked much about it, but it backs up to a national forest. Like it is up in the mountains. Nothing behind us, just forest. So the funniest part about all of this and what I'm getting to is the 2 shows that I have been watching lately on TV because I kind of go through, I record a bunch of stuff and then I binge watch shows. Both of them take place in forests. The first one is Dead Silent and it's a true crime series based around murders in the woods. So that was happening. And then I also have been watching Terror in the Woods, which is another one about paranormal shit and cryptids happening in the woods. Not really thinking through.
Not a good idea.
Thinking about like what I've been,
Really though?
walking around the houses, and it was okay. There's some weird shit. And, and as we were watching the show, Rick's like, what the fuck are you watching? And this is the cryptids paranormal one. I'm like, isn't this cool? Like, that is awesome. Yeah, cool until it's at night, dark, really fucking dark, in the middle of a mountain, and you're trying to get into your house, and the keypad's not working, and you're walking all around, and it is fucking dark up there. There is, there ain't no fucking lights. And we were freaked out. Like, he was like, thanks a lot. I'm waiting for fucking Bigfoot
Life ruining
jumping off the mountain and come after us. And yeah, it was effective. So I will recommend these, because if you like cryptid stuff, I'm not a real big Bigfoot person, but these are more about stories of experiences, more about, I'm going to find me Bigfoot. Like, I think those are stupid, because I'm like, clearly you haven't, or it'd be all over the news.
And they're just running around in the woods on shaky cam. Yeah, good times.
I have no interest in watching Finding Bigfoot, because if you have, we would know about it. It wouldn't be a series. So
right.
I don't need
Spoilers, you didn't find Bigfoot.
Drinking moonshine and traipsing through forests looking at footprints. So I recommend these both. Dead Silent is really good. It's creepy. It's all true stories of true crime. And then, yes, Terror in the Woods is paranormal. So those are the two ones that I would recommend. And so with that, we will get on with our thank you, Moni, for our scary, spooky stories part 2. And with that, Yardley, would you like to start us off here?
All right, this spooky story is called The Enemy, and it's by AG+. I flung myself through the door and vaulted the toppled, long-dead refrigerator that had served as an ineffective barricade in front of me. My legs propelled me through the room and into the small hallway on the other side. I couldn't stop to eat the expired contents of the fridge, appealing to me despite their stench after several days without food. The shrieks of pain and cries for mercy around me spurred my body onward and filled me with unexpected energy in spite of my hunger. We were at war. I came to a halt in front of a small bathroom. A noise. Something behind the shower curtain. My fear heightened and images of the enemy flooded my mind. Merciless beasts wearing human skin, devouring indiscriminately, accepting no pleas and respecting no argument. Zombies. It had begun as we expected, with a virus. The original infected were almost cliche. There was no humanity left in them, just mindless rage, twisted bodies, and some primal urge to consume others. Our generation had prepared with almost obsessive focus for this monster. The first wave was eradicated with almost laughable ease. We were not prepared for adaptation. We were not prepared for the culture we bred by destroying the instantly recognizable zombie, a creature with more tact. Most of the first zombies were killed at close range. You understand, since longer range attacks were less likely to be fatal. We had trained ourselves, even before the outbreak, to equate affection with death when it came to zombies. A person died when their eyes clouded over and they started biting, not when you put a bullet in their head. The new strain of the virus still controlled by the body, yes, but it left other faculties to the host. Maybe you could pull the trigger on a hopelessly crazed caricature of your best friend, your spouse, your child. But what if there was still a soul behind those eyes? Even as they attacked, they sobbed and screamed in their own voice. All the virus needed was a moment's hesitation. I bet you'd hesitate. I did. Which is why now I could only watch as my arm wrenched back the shower curtain and my hands reached for the cowering child. Why I could only beg for forgiveness before the virus used my mouth to tear ragged, bloody hunks from his body. Why did I even vomit as my hunger dissipated with the now sickeningly familiar taste of human flesh? We were at war, and I am the enemy. Thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
I thought that one worked. Okay.
That would be a great movie. A reverse zombie, like kind of like the Warm Bodies, but less about being a love story and more about being in the mind of like a person being a zombie, like eating people and
you don't get that
less
perspective
cute.
A lot in the tired zombie genre for sure.
Yes,
yeah.
You definitely don't.
And I think it would also be cool, for you to do it where you could see, something that The Walking Dead really doesn't do that much is kind of show the deterioration,
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying, of the mental faculties, like really show it and like, at some point maybe not being able to move, you know what I'm saying? But no, I thought that was pretty cool. I like that one.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. This next one is really fucked up, so like trigger warnings, and it's very short. Crying isn't going to help by honest rage. I pointed the gun at the sick bastard who killed my wife. He sobbed as he feared for what was to come. I pulled the trigger. If only he spoke and tried to reason with me, then maybe he could have lived. But obviously that was not going to happen. After all, he was born just a few minutes ago.
What? What the hell? Damn.
Yeah.
Sorry, honest rage. You got some splaining to
Got
do.
some honest rage.
Weird shit going on in that end. Damn.
So, Return of the Messiah by Hunt Frog. In the year 2026, the Messiah came back down to earth. She performed miracles and cured the sick. There was no doubt as to her authenticity. She appeared to all nations at once. All believed and all worshipped her. Sometime later, after this period of history known as the Age of Peace, after this period of our history known as the Age of Peace, she dropped a bombshell on us. She warned us that heaven was almost full. Nobody had gone to hell during this age. There was a fixed amount of spots left. Paradise would be closed to all who died after the gates close. That is when the mass suicides began. Taking your own life, she told us, was not a sin if you died a pious man. The race was on. She looked on and was pleased. She returned to her home, to the throne of fire and flames, and greeted all with a nod of her wicked horns.
Mm-hmm. Saw that coming.
Yup.
Yeah.
Girl.
I thought it was going to be like International Women's Day story. I was like, and all the men
It is.
and the women rose and inherited the earth. Nice. Okay, so I'm going to read The Twist at the End by AI 1267. Cradling my 4-year-old daughter in my arms, all I could do was listen as the screaming outside the house got louder and louder, interspersed with sounds of violence and horrible, horrible wet thuds, and the unmistakable echo of muscle and sinew resisting the force that was slowly tearing them apart. It started just 3 days ago. Something happened out there in the world. And before we even get news of what's going on, seemingly half of the world is gone. Police and military were unable to stop it. Providing such a short frame of resistance, it's hard to know whether it was real or just a fluke. There was no centralized target, no way to use our most powerful weapons, not without incinerating ourselves in the process. They poured forth across the world from wherever it was that it started. I hear banging on the door downstairs, and the screams of people being slaughtered, unable to mount a proper resistance against such a force. It doesn't take long before the pounding gives way to splintering and the sound of shattering wood. They're in the house. No more than a moment or two passes before the door to the bedroom starts shuddering. The things I piled against it are holding for now, but I know realistically that they're going to manage to come through. I keep rocking my little girl, humming a lullaby in her ear to calm her as she cries. The pounding grows in force and volume, the frame starting to crack. I put my little girl on my lap, her back to my chest, and I stroke her head with both hands, from the top of her scalp down across her ears, just as I've done ever since she was a baby. Just the way she loves it. The effect is instantaneous. Her desperate crying calms to a series of sobs and hiccups, her small body shuddering against mine in fear. I keep humming to her, soothing her hair, acting for all the world as if nothing is out of place, not a single thing amiss. Astonishingly slowly, in a reverse cadence of sound and splintering wood, she calms down. I can feel it when she stops tensing as I keep stroking her down the sides of her head. A final hiccup of a sob, and she falls quiet, her body relaxed. She doesn't even have time to realize what's happening as I twist her neck with a violent jerk, accompanied by a dry snap of a sound. She's dead before she can even slump down into my lap. The door is giving way. The furniture is pushed back. I may be torn limb from limb while I scream, but at least my baby angel's safe from harm. Whew, you know what that makes me think of? That movie, The Mist, or the book too. But damn, and then the cops come through the door and they're here to save.
Damn it.
Didn't The Mist have like a TV series or something on one of those? You said The Mist?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I didn't watch it though, but I liked the movie even though it's a super downer. So.
Oh man, it's such a good movie though. I just fucking love Stephen King. I mean, God, he can tell a story. So that was a rare one that they did good by the movie early before, these new ones started coming out of his. Because before there was a bad reputation of people trying to remake or make his movies from, books, and they just failed. So that was at the time it was a rarity, and so for some reason that made me think of The Mist. But anyway, Yardley, you ready?
Okay. Well, I am up. So this one is called The Eyes Are Watching Me by Reklidus. I bought a new house in the small town of Winthrop. The house was cheap, but the most important part was that I needed to get away from the city. A few months ago, I had a run-in with a stalker. While I managed to get him arrested, I couldn't shake the feeling of eyes just constantly watching me. I felt like there were eyes everywhere, at home and on the street. So I decided to move out into the country to somewhere with a little less people just for a peace of mind. The house itself was big and somewhat old, but otherwise very welcoming. The agent who introduced me to the house had been required to mention that a serial killer had lived there in the past, which was why the house was so cheap. Why would you make a house cheap just because a killer was in it? I mean, I get it. People get scared, but if it's a dope house, I'm not you know what I mean? But anyway.
Famous last words. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, everybody he killed is dead, and the killer's probably dead too. So I think I'm covered. And plus, run up in my house if you want to. You're going to have to fight your way out. But anyway, however, he and later my next door neighbor, Sarah, both told me to pay the thought no mind. 4 other owners had lived in the house since then, and all of them were happy with it. I love the house. Its interior furnishings were beautiful and very comfortable. The people of Winthrop were friendly, often bringing over freshly baked pastries or inviting me over to dinner. Get-togethers, they said, were the key to making sure everyone who lived in Winthrop loved it there. Yet after a week, I stopped loving it. The feeling of someone watching returned worse than before. I tried to ignore it, but soon I started losing sleep. Giant bags grew under my eyes, and I began yawning almost as much as I breathed. Sarah was kind enough to let me stay in her house for a few nights. It was during the time that I heard the legend of Forrest Carter, the serial killer who had lived in my house. While no one knows his exact kill count, Carter, also known as the Winthrop Peacock, was a man with an extremely severe case of narcissism. Legends say that he couldn't fall asleep if he didn't feel like he was being watched. He was finally arrested for putting up a scarecrow to watch him during the night. Only it wasn't a scarecrow. Carter had murdered a 17-year-old girl just so her corpse could stare at him. The story gave me shivers, and after I went home, I felt like there were hundreds of pairs of eyes just watching me, no matter how I turned. Today, however, was the first day that I acted out. I was cooking breakfast when I felt the eyes. Instinctively, out of fear, I threw my kitchen knife, which lodged itself into the wall. As I pulled it out, I found myself staring at a pair of eyes, pickling in formaldehyde.
What?
I've been watching the police peel away the drywall of my house for hours now. So far, they found 142 pairs of eyes in little glass jars. The scariest thing is each and every one was staring at me. Now, that's pretty messed up.
Nice.
Yeah, are you ready to buy that house now?
You know what? Well, I mean, as long as, hey, get those eyeballs out. Do the drywall. I've got a good story to tell when you come over for drinks. You know what I'm saying?
I'll be the first one there. Hello.
Yeah. I would start charging admission. Are you kidding me?
Hell yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? That's a money-making venture, I guess, to say the least. But then again, I think that, well, all of those eyes and stuff like that would be evidence, I guess, at that point. But yeah, I bet there's probably stuff like that You know what I'm saying? And like in different places where, you dig up a certain part of a yard or something like there's always some trifling stuff that's definitely somewhere. But quickly before we go on to your part, Moni, like do y'all feel like in instances like that, you remember when we were talking about when you go to a scary like a haunted house or something and you get a tour, how they lather you up with what happened there before you go in, and next thing you know, you're like, oh, I'm hearing a noise or I'm feeling something. Do you feel like, I mean, kind of this story kind of leans into it a little bit. It almost seems like if you didn't know about it, you know what I mean? Like people don't really talk about it, but I think it's a cool thing though. I mean, I think it's like a cool story. So I'm kind of with this one as well.
I think with my sensitivity to stuff, I would know it, but I would also, and this is one thing my husband, who doesn't believe in anything, appreciates, is I do try to rule out, like, okay, I heard a noise, but that was probably this,
Yeah.
So.
But I mean, like, I live in Atlanta, and like the place where I, when I first moved into the place where I'm at now, like I found a Civil War, cannonball. Like it was like in the backyard under like a certain amount of dirt. I think I was out there digging or something and I ended up finding it. So I'm like, one of the reasons why I said that is that, if you live in the city of Atlanta, there's a lot of dead people and dead bodies all around. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know.
Oh, out here, they're like, oh, it's on Native American burial grounds. And I'm like, everything's on Native American burial grounds out here. Like, we shouldn't have built, but we already did. So I don't know what else to say. Yeah. So the next one, you had something a comment, Christy? Or
no, I agreed. I think, like, you're both this, like, right, because, there's the war here, and then what wasn't, picked apart by war is, again, Native American land.
Yep.
So it's kind of like, well, I was just talking, when I said, I was like, Moni, I'm so pissed at myself. I didn't buy a haunted house. Like, I should have bought a haunted house.
I was like, how do you not know?
It's not haunted? And I'm like, well, I don't. And I was telling Rick that, and he was like, well, it's probably not. I'm like, yeah, but the world's a graveyard, so who knows?
Pick up some stuff from an antique shop and see what starts happening around there. It doesn't have to come with the house.
And none of those bodies kept people away from All-Star Weekend or Pond City Market like there wasn't the tokens around. So, you know what I mean? But anyway.
So this story is called YLM 3, posted by I Post at Midnight. The next two are I Post at Midnight. Little Emily vanished last year. Now they're pouring new sidewalks in my neighborhood. And I've found her name in the wet cement, written in remembrance. But it was written in reverse, and from below. Do you get it, too? The name of it, Y Lim, is Emily backwards in reverse.
I'm like...
if you were to see it, I just noticed that, too, when I was reading the title. I'm like, why is this so weird? I'm like, it says Emily.
I get it now. Very clever. Very, very clever. I Post at Midnight.
So here's another one from that same user. My favorite support group. Look, I'll be the first to admit that I'm a complete bastard. I'm also lazy. I'm only here to find the idiot because there's always an idiot. This support group is pretty typical. We connected online, decided on a quiet place, and now we're all sitting cross-legged in a circle. Real kumbaya crap. Jerome takes the lead, pouring everyone a cup of tea as he starts talking. I'm Jerome. You can drink your tea, but only after explaining why you're here. I'll start. Jerome tells us he's never been loved. I can see why. The guy's as ugly as sin. He sips his tea while his mousy chick speaks next. Me, you, she says, my parents. Short and sweet, no blubbering. Gotta admire me, you. She's probably not the idiot. Next to talk are a legless veteran, a broke businessman, a needle-tracked junkie, and a diseased old crone. Then it's my turn. I'm an ass. Everyone hates me. I take a loud, annoying slurp of oolong as the fat kid with the black eye goes next, telling his boring fat kid sob story. Afterward, we're all sitting quietly when Jerome keels over. Then Miyu's eyes roll back and she slumps forward. Only the fat kid reacts. What's happening? He whines. I thought this was a suicide support group. Found the idiot. It is, I say, spitting out a mouthful of tea. They support it. No one wants to die alone, kid. Oh, how ghost white he turns, looking at his cup. I love it. These suicide meetups are a sadist dream, and I never have to lift a finger. Told you I'm a lazy bastard.
Ew. Who's this person?
Nasty one. I didn't even feel good saying those things, but
I want to know who this person is writing these. I'm like, shit.
You go hard.
Messed up. All right. The next one is called Hidden by KMA Poke, whatever. Where are you? I scream. Panicked, I run through the abandoned farm. I can't find her. Not in the old house. Not in the barn. I run to the empty field, heart racing. As I scan the area, I run into a mound of dirt and trip, sprawling to the ground. Getting up, it hits me. Abandoned farm. I tripped over freshly tilled earth. Crouching down, I start frantically clawing with my hands. Scooping handfuls of dirt, I hit something hard. Wood. Are you in there? I cry, pressing my ear to the wood. I hear muffled cries. I start digging again, but realize it's taking too long. Looking around, I see a garden shed. I sprint to it, ripping the door open. I see a shovel, still caked in dirt. Probably the same one that bastard buried her with. I grab it, running back. I started digging with purpose. Soon, the wooden box is exposed. I toss the shovel and rip open the crate. She stares back at me, eyes wide, bound, gagged, but alive. I sigh with relief. Thank God, I reach into my bag. Pulling out my rag and chloroform, I crouch down, placing it over her face. She struggles, faints. I toss her over my shoulder. Aw, hell, my brother says as I walk back to the truck with a smirk. You found her? Yep, you almost had me, though, I laugh. All right, my turn. Where did you put her? I gesture to the creek area. Somewhere over there, drowning an issue, though. Jerk, he says, running off. I smile, watching him go. I love adult hide and seek. Damn! These people are fucked up. Shit.
Okay, so next time, You'll Know Better by I Posted Midnight. Have you ever walked into a room and found a vampire? No, not the sexy kind, but a foul creature with bony limbs and ashen skin. The kind that snarls as you enter, like a beast about to pounce. The kind that roots you to the spot with its sunken, hypnotic eyes, rendering you unable to flee as you watch the hideous thing uncoil from the shadows. Has your heart started racing through your legs? Refused to? Have you felt time slow as the creature crosses the room in the darkness of a blink? Have you shuddered with fear when it places one clawed hand atop your head and another under your chin so it can tilt you, exposing your neck? Have you squirmed as its rough, dry tongue slides down your cheek, over your jaw, to your throat in a slithering search that's seeking your artery? Have you felt its hot breath release in a hiss against your skin when it probes your pulse, the flow that leads to your brain? Has its tongue rested there, throbbing slightly as if savoring the moment? Have you then experienced a sinking, sucking blackness as you discover that not all vampires feed on blood? Some feed on memories. Well, have you? Maybe not. But let me rephrase the question. Have you ever walked into a room and suddenly forgotten why you came in? All the goddamn time. I did it 3 times before the show.
That would really be creepy to think that's the reason, though. See, I bet you'll think about it next time.
Yeah.
Hands by Min Boy. The doctor pulled the stethoscope ear tips out and hung the device around his neck. Mr. Weatherby, all of your tests have come back negative, and my examination shows nothing abnormal. Adam knew what was coming next. I'm not crazy, doctor. I'm sorry, but there's no physical reason for you to occasionally lose control of your hands. A psychologist can help. I don't need therapy. I need answers. They seem to take on a life all of their own. I can't hold a job. I'm under investigation for assault. I almost killed my neighbor. This can't go on. I'll try anything at this point. After 2 weeks on a new medication, Adam saw no progress and grew increasingly depressed. He was convinced that despite what the doctors said, it was not a psychological problem. That night, a frustrated and angry Adam sat in a chair and drank bourbon. Drunk and hopeless, he stumbled to the garage and started the table saw, then slowly lowered his wrist toward the screaming blade. Detective Armstrong entered the garage where several uniformed officers stood over the blood-soaked body. "So what have we got?" he asked, taking in the blood-splattered scene. "This is a weird one, Detective." "How so?" "Take a look at the body. He apparently chopped off his hands with the table saw and bled to death." Armstrong knelt down. And we can't find his hands anywhere.
It's like Adam's family hand.
Yeah.
Nice.
Snap, snap.
Exactly. All right. This next one is called Hell by Mean Pete. There was no pearly gate. The only reason I knew I was in a cave was because I had just passed the entrance. The rock wall rose behind me with no ceiling in sight. I knew this was it. This was what religion talked about, what man feared. I had just entered the gate to hell. I felt the presence of the cave as if it was living, as if it was a living, breathing creature. The stench of rotten flesh overwhelmed me. Then there was the voice. It came from inside and all around. "Welcome. Who are you?" I asked, trying to keep my composure. "You know," the thing answered. I did know. "You are the devil," I stuttered, quickly losing my composure. "Why me? I've lived as good as I could." The silence took over the space as my words died out. It seemed like an hour went by before the response came. "What did you expect?" The voice was penetrating but patient. "I don't know. I never believed in any of this," I uttered. "Is that why I'm here?" Silence continued. "They say the greatest trick you ever pulled was convincing the world you don't exist." "No, the greatest trick I ever pulled was convincing the world that there's an alternative." "There's no God?" I shivered. The cave trembled with the words, "I am God." Ooh, nice. Very nice. Really quick, where are we at the time? Okay, so we have some time.
Yeah.
I was just going to run over this really quick. Sorry. Okay, one of these is recent. There is a large uptick of reports of black-eyed kids. And a lot of the stories that I found are on Reddit, but they're links to videos. So that doesn't really help us. We can't really talk about stories unless we sit down and watch them. Maybe we can do another episode of what might be happening and why all of a sudden there is a higher population of reports of black-eyed kids happening. So this first one is one that is recent. I think it's about 3 months old. Would you like to read it, Yardley?
Yes, I can do that.
Okay.
Okay. So black-eyed kids reports are escalating since the beginning of 2020 by Girl in the Tethered Hood. I can't say that they meant to approach me, but they did follow me, and it ended up being unnerving enough that I told my husband about it later that night because I couldn't wrap my head around it. Let me explain. I don't drink, so I'm the designated driver, on-call Uber, if you will, for my husband and his friends when they go out on the occasional weekend. On this particular night, it was warm and clear, so nothing out of the ordinary. As I just dropped my husband and his two friends off at the bar, a town away from our home around 10 p.m. The bar has an alley next to it that I always make a right turn onto, which eventually, a few right turns later around the block, leads me back to the main road. No one is ever on this road no matter the time of day that I've ever driven on it. No one sits on their porches. No one wanders on foot. The alley leads to another alley parallel to the back of the bar, and this alley is long, and the only building on it is a rundown mechanic shop. I was on this road driving normal town speed when I saw up ahead a group of what looked like teenagers and a couple of small kids, definitely too young to just be out, just moseying up to the road facing away from me. As my car approached them, they slowed down to nearly a crawl, and a few of them turned to look towards me. My headlights shined at their faces, and I only saw black eyes. I swore at the time my eyes were playing tricks on me, but I didn't stop to double check. I passed them and rolled to the stop sign, made the last right turn to the last alley, and headed back to the main road. I looked into my rear view one more time and was shocked to see the kids were still less than a football field behind me. At that point, I was waiting at a red light to turn left onto the main road and hit the highway home, and it was almost like the kids were walking at a speed of running towards me. Their legs weren't moving in a running motion, but the speed at which they were gaining on my car was incredible. I kept looking into my rear view to see where they were and hoping the light would turn before they caught up with me. And by the time they got about 20 yards behind me, the light turned and I hightailed it out of there. I ain't waiting for no light. If I got it, I'm out.
Shit.
I never did get a second look, but the entire event was eerie. It made me uncomfortable. Needless to say, when I picked my husband and his friends up, I took the long way back to the highway instead of the alley that night.
So yeah, and these are, by the way, these are stories that people are reporting as actually has happened. Like they're not, we've been reading stories that people are writing and they're really good and creepy. These are just people just telling stories of what they're saying happened to them, of experiences of black-eyed kids. So the next one is not a recent one, but it was a response to this one. And I thought it was really good. And so, Moni, did you want to read this next one?
Sure. It's by Swamp Puppy. This is not my story, but a story from a friend's great-grandfather. I've gotten permission to tell it. This story takes place during the late summer in the 1960s in Osceola, Iowa, which is a very small farming community. My friend's great-grandpa Bob owned a farm out there. He had acres of corn, wheat, potatoes, etc., but corn was his main crop, so he had a huge cornfield. It was around 2 a.m., and his grandfather couldn't sleep, so he went outside to get some fresh air. When outside, he noticed something that looked like a child walking around in the cornfield. So Bob ran back inside and grabbed his double-barrel shotgun and woke the farmhand for backup. They combed through the cornfield in an attempt to find whatever was running around out there. After a while, they still couldn't find anything, so Bob told the farmhand to go back inside the house while he stayed on the porch to watch his field. Then he looks at the gravel road between his yard and the fence line that led to the cornfield, and standing on the road was a little girl around 6 years old or so. She was wearing a white dress that made her look like she had just gotten out of church. Bob thought his mind must have been playing tricks on him, so he tried to lay down on the couch and rest, but also still stay somewhat alert. However, not even a minute after he laid down, he heard a knock on the screen door. He walked up to the door and slightly cracked the main door open, and he sees the little girl, and he asks, "May I help you?" The little girl said, "Mister, I'm lost and I don't know where my parents are. Can I come in the house and use your telephone?" Bob felt uneasy and told her that he could get her a glass of water and call her parents for her if she gives him the number, but he didn't feel comfortable letting her inside. He felt something was off about the little girl. However, this little girl insisted on being the one to call and talk to them. And Bob said, "Young lady, it's 2 a.m. and I don't feel comfortable letting a stranger inside the house, little girl or not." The little girl started to get agitated and said, "I'm not leaving until you let me in to use your phone." Startled, Bob told the little girl he was going to call the police to have them come pick her up so they could keep her safe and find her parents. He closed the door to go and call the police, but he heard someone punch the door like a grown man. He walked back and cracked the door open again, but when he looked, he realized it was the little girl that had punched the door. When he looked this time, she didn't have any eyes. Instead, she had pitch black orbs. And she said in a deep voice, "Let me in." So Bob grabbed his shotgun and pointed it at the little girl and told her to go away. After this, the little girl looked right into the barrel, then back at Bob, smiled smugly at him and giggled, and then ran back into the cornfield and disappeared.
Yeah, so everybody, people were responding to this, and he swears that he was like, I swear this is not a story I wrote. This really happened to him. He's like, even as I was writing this, I was interacting with his grandson that was telling me the story to get all the details. So I thought it was an interesting story because you don't really hear a lot about black-eyed kids back in the 60s. You hear about them from kind of like 1980s and on. So this was kind of a rare gem of a story that's supposed to have taken place back in the 1960s.
Crazy.
So with that, if you guys get online, you will see a ton of stories about black-eyed kids. You can find them on Reddit, and there's a ton of YouTube leaks. And you can go, there's also a podcast, and he has dedicated his entire podcast to stories of black-eyed kids. So if you guys are really into it, yes, there's some strange thing going on where they're getting lots and lots of reports of them walking around and interacting with them, and interesting little stories. They're starting to get wiser, they're saying, and they're coming up with new ways to get in the house because who has phones in their houses anymore? I don't. I have a cell phone.
Yeah.
So they say they're injured or some shit like that. So, yeah.
Creepy.
Starting to look a little bit more modern, too, because those were always the stories that their clothes just quite don't either match the season or they're off or by a couple of decades or something random like that. So people are starting to report that
they're
they
evolving.
feel like shit's starting to get real. And you're starting to see more of them. Not only that, but they're also seem to be wising up about their stories. So pretty interesting stuff. I started watching a few of the videos, but I haven't had a lot of time, so I'll report back if I got any good stories, or you guys are more than welcome to check them out yourself. With that, next week, Moni, do you want to talk about what you want to do next week?
Yeah, we're going to talk about some famous axe murders. Some you'll have heard of, some hopefully you will have not, but you won't have heard it from this crew, so there you go. And I don't know why I'm into axe murders, but I feel like we've done enough serial killer stuff that we can move on to specifics like axes and hatchets and chainsaws. So let's start with axes, and that'll be fun.
Cool. That makes me think of that commercial where they're like, let's go in the running car.
Oh, yeah.
I'm silly. Let's go into the shed with chainsaws or whatever. And they're like, oh, yeah, great idea. I think I actually quoted it last night when we were laughing because we were scaring ourselves. But yes, that sounds interesting. So this is going to be, you actually went to an axe murderer?
No, I wish.
Oh.
That's bucket list shit. Yeah, for sure. But it's like, I can only go to so many asylums, especially in a pandemic, especially like when you can't travel and stuff. Right. So I guess I have to move on to axe murders. So I'm starting my research now.
Sounds good. How exciting. Okie dokie. Well, with that, Yardley, do you want to give out your socials?
Yes, you can follow me on Twitter at militant_marker.
Nice. Moni?
I am at Moni Bear across the board. And of course, we are the Creepin' It Real show. And I'm just saying that because yesterday I wore a shirt that said Creep It Real. And that was okay with me for the first time since someone gifted me that shirt because we fucking own that too. So.
Yes, that's right. And we also run a nice Facebook account, and Moni has uploaded some nice videos. Yes, we talked about, she did some stuff this weekend. And then you can find me, Creepin' It Christy on Instagram and Creepin_It on Twitter and Creepin' It Christy on TikTok. And I will be doing my paranormal shit on TikTok as well as Instagram, but I am also going to be somewhat in small ways chronicling my journey of the laughable instances of me trying to get this house ready to go on the vacation market. So I should probably have some really entertaining stuff around that as well. And if you want to stay in the Georgia mountains, that backs up to a national forest at the Creepin' at Real Altitude Adjustment House, hit me up and I'll send you the calendar. So with that, you can also follow Moni at Creators Assemble. She has a nonprofit organization that she heads, and they do lots of awesome things for kids and I think also find work for artists and stuff.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, that's it, y'all. Appreciate you sticking in there and listening to our good stories, and we will catch you on the flip side.